right. All right. All right, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to today's workbook lesson out of a course in miracles. And my name is Oliver Blue, and I am your temporary guide, your temporary coach, your temporary teacher, and I'm honored to be that. But most importantly, I am your permanent brother. I am your permanent self. We are one. We share the same life, the same love, the same being, just like we share the same air. The one that breathes you and me is the same. Everything about us is the same. I and you and me, we are one. And not only one with each other, but we're one with our Creator and all living things. And welcome to today's session. And I'm so happy that you are here. And today we're going to be looking at workbook lesson number 166. 166. And so hopefully you are reading along with me if you have your book, if you're on this journey with me, or just you're just popping in as a visitor. Just sit back and relax. Here, what we do is we teach advanced spirituality, what we call genuine spirituality. And so, what does advanced spirituality mean? It just means exactly what it says. It's advanced. In other words, we're looking beyond just the basics, the elementary things of God, but we are going into a deep dive into that which is real. Going beyond religion, going beyond we're just going beyond the idea of knowing about God or but we're transcending. We are transcending just the casual thoughts of God or the casual thoughts of religion or whatever. We're going up and beyond that. We're taking a deep dive. Excuse me there. So yes, so advanced just basically mean that we're taking a deep dive into the study of reality. And it's our goal to align ourselves, primarily our thinking, which will ultimately affect our perception and ultimately affect our actions. But primarily the focus is on the mind and aligning the mind, our mind, with that which is defined as reality. And we use primarily we're using the Course in Miracles, which is a course in spirituality, advanced spirituality. And we're going through the 365 lessons that are in the workbook section of the book. And we're also using other references. More specifically, we do use the Bible as a reference as we're teaching these to help to bring bring more clarity to the ideas that are brought forth in the book. But the whole purpose for the 365 workbook lessons is to help us to renew our mind or transform our mind from the mundane thinking or the conditioning way of thinking that most all humans have taken part in, to where we become so conditioned by this world and the world system, and that we've been really trained in a system based on the belief in separation, which in and of itself, we have learned that it creates an entire thought system of itself. But we have found that only the thoughts of God are real, in the sense that they are eternal, in the sense that even they transcend time and space. They transcend this three-dimensional world we live in. And so it is those thoughts that we are using to move away from being conformed to this world way of thinking and being transformed by the thoughts of God. And what we are finding out here is that it is our responsibility to grab a hold of our mind, which is the vehicle by which we have access to this world, as well as have access to the world of reality. And so it is by way of going through the 365 lessons that we are undoing the thought system of the ego thought system, and we're replacing that with the thoughts of God, because it is the thoughts of God that is, if that is our reality, then we want to align ourselves, align our thoughts, our perception, and our action, which will ultimately result in our peace. And so that's just a brief explanation of how we got here. But what's most important is that we're here right here today in this moment, and we're going to go through this lesson 166. And so today's lesson reads, I am entrusted. And notice now, I always like to say this, when we see a sentence that starts with the two words, I am is referring to that which God created, the I am. And that which God created, he created it by extending his very own self. It's called by extension. Creation is extension. And so that which is extended is based primarily is what is extended is what is the same as that which is extended. And so God extended himself, or God shared his love. And in the sharing of that love, in the extension of that love, God basically duplicated himself. And in that creation, he calls it the I am. Because the foundation of the study of A Course in Miracles is that God is, and there is nothing else. That God is the only reality. Everything else is an illusion, meaning it's not real. Subject to change. It's not eternal. Like this world is built on. This world is made on the idea of separation, which is not a foundation in God. God can only create like himself. So God would not create a world that's as we've seen and experienced. So when here it says, I am entrusted. I am entrusted. I am is talking about our true self, that which God created, that perfect, innocent, whole, complete self that we are, that which is just like God. It is that shared being that we are, that we share with God. So when we're saying I am entrusted, really we're talking about God. God is entrusted with the gifts of God. Or we say, I am entrusted with the gift of God. So it's been directed towards our true reality. Not the self that we made. Not the conditioned self. Not the body self. Not the body identification self that has a birth date and a timeline and a personal history. That's not the self we're talking about. We're talking about the real you and the real me. That is divine, that is eternal, that is unalterable, unchangeable. We're changeless. We're timeless. We're birthless and deathless. We're everything that God is. We have no beginning and no end. We merely is. Just like God merely is. There's no explanation. And so that is the I am that we're talking about. So here it says, I am entrusted with the gifts of God. So the subject here is what? The gifts of God. What are the gifts of God? Here it's saying that we have been entrusted with the gifts of God. That word entrust goes beyond just the idea of trust as we know it here on the material level. But what it speaks to is that the gifts of God has been built into our nature, never to be separate from us. So it's beyond just trust, but we're entrusted. This is a very part of us. All the gifts of God are within us. It was in us at creation. They've always been within us. And they're changeless, and they're timeless, and they're formless. They can be unrecognized, but they can't be changed. The trust can't be withdrawn. God is stuck with what he created. In other words, God is stuck with himself. So this is a huge statement that it's a statement of God's original process of creation, whereby God guarantees that what he created is himself. So he's 100% confident about what he made, about what he created. Remember, God doesn't make anything. God creates from his own self. He don't pull from anywhere else, but just pulled from himself, extended himself, and called that self his creation, called that self Christ, called that self the I am. And that is who we are. Timeless, formless being. Finding ourselves somehow, in cahoots with a physical body and a physical world in time and space. And so we're entrusted with God's gifts. That means that every day is like Christmas because we're filled with the gifts of God every day, every moment of every day, every hour of every day, every instant in time. We're never separate from God's gifts. And God's greatest gift is Himself. But here it says gifts. And so let's just get in here and see what it talks about. It says, all things are given you. Ooh, that's a huge statement. All things are given. Remember, we said that giving and receiving is one act of love. And so that God didn't just give these all things, but God, because God is one, and that which He creates is one, what He gave in the same instant it was received. It was not rejected. And so all things are given to us. It's what it starts out by saying here. All things. Paul picked up on it in one of the epistles in the New Testament of the Bible. He says, all things are ours. All things are ours. See if I can't find that. So in 1 Corinthians 3:21, 1 Corinthians 3:21 in the Bible, and I'm using the King James Version, it says, therefore, let no man glory. Let no man boast, in other words, in men. Let no man boast in men or put his confidence in men. We talked the other day about the fact that there's an honor that comes from God only. And all humanity has been honored with that honor. But Jesus, in his encounter with the religious people of his time, said that they rejected him because they sought the honor among themselves, the honor that comes from men, and didn't seek the honor. He said it this way: you guys seek the honor one from another. Like here it says, do not glory in men. That's what he's talking about. He said, but you don't seek the honor that comes from God only, which Jesus was actually walking in. He was saying God has what God has. God is his Father. So for God to be your Father, that's an honor. And that comes from God only. Even in the natural, the father and the mother of a newborn, if they're loving parents, they're honored to have that child. And that child received the honor of their parents. They're crowned with glory and honor from their parents. Why? Because as natural parents, it can never be changed, in the sense that nothing can change the fact that the original natural parents of the child, that cannot be undone. So they bestow honor upon the child and glory upon the child. Well, because God is our creator, not anyone else. God is our creator. If you are conscious and if you are aware, God is your creator. And that consciousness and that awareness that you have, that's an honor that God has bestowed upon you. And so Jesus told the religious people of the time who was rejecting him because he was coming with something different, something new. But he was coming with something that was a real solution to their dilemma. And they rejected it. And he said to them, you guys, you seek honor one from another. You seek honor from man. He said, but my honor does not come from man. My honor comes from God only, because God is my Father. And what he was trying to tell them is that God was their Father too. That they have been glorified and honored just like Jesus. That was his whole purpose for coming. To share the good news of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. And they rejected it because it was a threat to their religious system. It threatened their system. And so it says all things are given unto you. But let's go back to the scripture. It says, okay, again, 1 Corinthians 3:21. It says, therefore, let no man glory in God, glory in men. He said, for all things are yours. And man doesn't have the ability to give all things. But all things are already given unto man. That can only come from the only source that there is, which is God. So here Paul picked up on the revelation that it's being shared right here. All things are given unto you. God trust in you is limitless. So God's trust in you is limitless. It's like a trust. You know how you can, in the natural, you can create a trust, and this trust stands above all things in the legal community. It transcends any other document when someone has a trust. A trust is a symbol of honor. It can't be broken in the natural. Likewise, God entrusted us with all his gifts. And then it says, all things are given unto us. So what is God gives? All things. Everything is a gift from God. He knows his son. He knows what he created. He knows what the I am really is. He knows what the Christ really is. It's himself. So he's not betting, but he's confident in himself. God is so confident in himself. In fact, in Hebrews, it said that when he could find no greater than himself, he swore by himself, saying, surely he has entrusted us with everything. That's what blessing means. He says, surely I have blessed you. To be blessed is to be what? Entrusted with everything. He say he knows his son. He say he gives without exception. So there's no human that is excluded from the trust or the entrust, or there's no human that is excluded from the honor that comes from God only. He said he gives without exception, holding nothing back. that can contribute to your happiness. So what he has given us in creation is our very own happiness. And it's wrapped up in everything. The natural mind cannot conceive. How could that be? How can we have everything? The natural mind doesn't conceive that. Because all it knows is what it has learned. All it knows is what it has experienced here in this dimensional world. And this dimensional world is not even a reality. It's not even real. So God is talking about what's been given is that which is eternal, that which is real. It is that pearl that we talked about. It is that treasure that we talked about. That transcend this world. This world's a counterfeit. You ever notice that, you come in, you don't have anything? Now compare this to what? The product. Compare this to Adam and Eve when they was placed in the garden and they had everything. Compare this to the prodigal son before he went on a journey. He had everything. Right? But you notice when you come into this world, in this body identification world as a body, you notice you don't have anything. You come in naked. You don't have nothing. You don't own nothing. Your name's not on nothing. In fact, you're not even legal enough to own anything. So you come in here totally dependent. You own nothing. And if you ever notice, when the body self is laid down and no longer participating in this world, you ever notice it doesn't take anything with it. You leave here the same way you come, with nothing. Why? Because this is an illusion. So when God's talking about that, he has given us everything. He's not talking about this world. He has given us everything that is real. He's given us everything that is eternal. He's given us everything that is everlasting. So that's an honor. He says, he gives without exception, holding nothing back that can contribute to your happiness. And it was that belief that God had God had held something back from Adam. And that was the idea that that the Father had held something back from the prodigal son. He said, give me my inheritance. And that's that thought that brought in this whole thought system that turned right side up, upside down. He said, and yet, unless your will is one with his, even though this is the truth, even though we've been given everything is ours. Even our happiness, we have everything. In the creation, we have everything. He said, even though that's the truth, unless your will is one with his gifts are not received. And how did our will get misaligned with God? What happened? Well, what happened is we made of ourselves, or attempted to make of ourselves, something that we're not, by believing in separation. By believing that we separate from God and separate from each other, by not embracing the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. When you don't embrace that, then you have what? You have taken on a will of your own, because that's the will of God. When you don't see yourself and God as equal, when you don't see yourself and all humanity as equal, you have missed the will of God. You have taken on a different will. You have taken on a different thought system. He said, and so when this happens, he says what? His gifts are not received. That's a rejection. That's a denial of what God has given in creation. God said, I created all things as one. And we come back and say, no. We made all things as what? As separate and multiple. And God said, no, it's one. No, we said, no, it's multiple. See all these different bodies. See all these different places. See all these different things. Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall and broke into billions and billions of pieces, never to be put back together again. So that's the thought system that was birthed out of, that birthed the world, that birthed the conditioning self that we have experienced. And only to what? Now we're trying to find our way back home. Find our way back to the will of God. What is the will of God is? Because I have followed my own will and has led me to the pig pen. I don't have peace. I don't have joy. I don't have happiness. Some of us say I don't have no money. I don't have nothing. And some will say I got all this money. I got all these riches, but I ain't happy. I'm depressed. You say, but what would make you think there is another will than his? What would make us think that here's the God of creation who says that I am and there is nothing else? I am all encompassing. I'm omnipresent. I'm omniscient. I am everything, and everything is me. What make us think that if that be true, that we can go out and create a self and a self-will and say, look at me. I did it. I separated. I got my own. See, look on here's the proof. Here's the deed to my property. Here's my bank account. Here's my security codes. See, I got my own. So it's a question. It's a rhetorical question. But what would make you think there is another will than God's? Jesus said to the disciples when they asked him, teach us how to pray. He says what? Our Father, which art in heaven, holy is thy name, thy kingdom, thy will. See, thy will be done. Why? Because it's the only will there is. He was telling them, hey, align your thinking with the will of God, because it is your will also. Because no one has more interest in our happiness than our Creator. No one. This world does not offer us the happiness that is entrusted within us. Here is the paradox then that underlies the making of the world. Notice now, they say the making of the world is a paradox. Notice now, it didn't say the creation of the world. It said the making of the world, because we've understanding from these teachings that the world as we know it was not created by God, but actually the world was created as a defense against God as we know it. The world was created as an attack on God. To attack what? His truth. That all things are the one thing. And so it says, here's the paradox that underlies the making of the world. It says, this world is not the will of God. The world as we know it, it is not God's will. Why? It doesn't reflect the love of God. It doesn't reflect the nature of God. It doesn't carry the message of God. Everything in this world is designed to withdraw every remembrance of God from you. Everything about this world is designed to give your allegiance to an idea of separation. This world was not made to promote oneness. And that's why you see what is happening throughout all of history and what continues to happen here in 2022 with all of this strife and fighting and warring and separation and division and polarity. You see it happening in every arena of life. This fight and this tug of war. You think God would make something like that? So it says, here's the paradox. This world, and I know that's a big pill to swallow for you if you're hearing this for the first time, and I understand. So I'm not, I remember the first time this idea was presented to me, and I was like, about 3 seconds, I say, oh, it makes sense to me. Now it makes sense. It brought clarity to a lot of things. Because I was like, God, how can you create something like this? And God said, I didn't create this. He said, this was made. This is man-made. You know how when you buy something and you wonder whether it's, real or not real, whether it's real leather. And then you look at the tag and say, what? Man-made. What's man-made? Means a counterfeit. This world is a counterfeit. This world is a counterfeit. And the sooner we embrace that, the more things going to make sense to us. He says, this world is not the will of God, and so it is not real. See? Remember what we said. The foundation of the Course in Miracles is based on two ideas. That which is real cannot be threatened, meaning it can't be changed, can't be altered. That which is real cannot be threatened. Second line says, that which is unreal does not exist. So here, if it says, this world is not the will of God, what God is saying is, what, from his point of view, this world don't even exist. So what we are experiencing in a dreamlike state. We experience the world in a dreamlike state, in a state of hallucination, vain imaginings, fantasies. Yet those who think that this world is real must still believe there is another will. So for you to think, or any of us to think, that this world is real, like real based on what reality is, it says for us to do that, we have to believe that there is another will besides God, which we say is our own will. And a will that leads to opposite effects from those that God wills. So it's still part of this idea of separation, that we have become these individuated selves, separate from God, with our own will, doing our own thing, and declaring that there's more than one will of God. It's like we're proving God wrong. And we wonder why life gets to be so hard. It says, impossible indeed. What? For there to be a will other than the will of God. He says impossible. But every mind that looks upon the world and judges it as something that is certain, something that is solid, and something that is trustworthy, and true believes in two creator, and true believe that there's two creators. God created and mankind created. Or in one, man alone created is the creator. He said, but never in one God. And so that's the problem with our thinking. There's this belief in multiplicity. There's this belief that there is a reality to separation, and there is not. There's a reality to multiplicities of ideas and choices, and there is not. Therein lies the problem. Paragraph 3 says, the gifts of God are not acceptable to anyone who holds such strange beliefs. The gifts of God. Notice now, God has given us everything. He said, but everything that God has given is not acceptable to anyone who holds such strange beliefs. He must believe that to accept God's gift, however evident they may become, however urgent he may be called to claim them as his own, is to be pressed to treachery against himself. It's like, to believe this, he believed that he has to be forced into it. This is the thought system of separation. Nobody telling me what to do. He must deny their presence. So with this thought system, we deny the presence of the gifts that God has given to us, which is his very own self. He said we deny his presence, contradict the truth. We contradict the truth. And this is all happening in our thinking, and suffer to preserve the world that he made. So we go about making our own way, thinking our own way, making up our own system of thinking and believing, making up our own system of perception, making up our own system of judgment, making up our own system of governments, making up our own system of religion. This is what man has done. Out to prove that there's multiple wills. That's what Adam and Eve went out to prove. That's what the prodigal son went out to prove. Give me my inheritance. That's what he said. I think there's something else. I think you hold it back on me, Father. Give me my inheritance, is what Adam and Eve said. The voice in the garden told me that you were holding something back on us, that if we would eat from this forbidden place, we would be like you. Well, we thought we was already like you, but they told us we're not like you. So we want to explore the other options. And you see the mess that we made as a species. Here is the only home that he thinks that he knows, meaning this made world. We made another home away from home. Here is the only safety he believes that he can find in this world. Without the world he made, is he an outcast. This is the only world I know, Father. This is the only world I know. This is the only world I've been born into. I got to fit into this world, otherwise I'm going to be an outcast. I'm going to be homeless. I'm going to be afraid. So I got to fit in. That's why the prodigal son left home, and he said he went and he made friends. And him and his friends made what? They made a home. They made a life, and they lived riotously. That is symbolic what we done collectively. It's symbolic of the path that we all choose at some point, only to get to a point in our life where we say there must be a better way, because this is not working. It's something that I don't know. So we feel like this is the only world we have. This is the only home we have. And if we got to fit in, or we'll be an outcast. We got to be like everyone else in the world. We got to think like everyone in the world. We got to perceive like everyone else. We got to learn this thought system. We got to learn, we got to learn the streets. We got to learn this. We got to learn. So this world is all about learning. And God said, what I gave you is beyond learning. He said, without the world he made is he an outcast, homeless and afraid. He does not realize that it is here. He is afraid indeed, and homeless too, an outcast wandering so far from home, so long away, he does not realize he has forgotten where he came from, where he goes, and even who he really is. This is what happens to the mind that believes it's separate from God. We go out to make a life. We ignore the will of God. We ignore the gifts of God that's intrinsic in all of us. And we go on this prodigal journey. Afraid. We go on this prodigal journey and we're really homeless. No one ever really feels at home here. There's always something about being here that's not right. It's limiting. It's something about this limiting time and space. It's always this itch that something is just not quite right. When we look at our past, when we look at what we can expect in the future, when we look at the present situation and conditions of this world, we know that something ain't right. Something is not right. So we are indeed afraid, and we look for security in this world. And then when someone stands up and say, I am the leader, I'm the savior, I'll lead you into freedom, I'll secure your predicure, I'll secure your race, I'll protect you from them. See, promoting separation. And they say, yay, we got a new leader. And so when the blind leads the blind, they all end up in the ditch. So here in this life, he say he realized that he is what? Afraid, indeed, homeless, an outcast, wandering like the prodigal son. Wandering what? So far from home, so long away. He does not realize he has forgotten where he has come from. And that's what happened to us. We lose total memory of our creation. We forget totally who we are. We don't know where we're going. And all we see is history upon history, years upon years, but repeating the same old cycle of birth and death, of war and fighting, of poverty, scarcity. And people come and people go. And it seems that we're advancing everywhere but in our thinking. And say we get to the point where we forget who we really are. So that is the state of humanity. Even in a world that is filled with technological advances. But what has not advanced is our thinking. He said, yet in his lonely, senseless wanderings, And this is God talking about us. Or this is the Holy Spirit talking about us, because see, God knows nothing of this. But the memory of God that came into the dream with us, this is who's talking to us. It's that internal teacher I told you about. See, I'm just a temporary teacher, but the permanent teacher that's within all of us, that lays down with you, get up with you, go everywhere you go, see everything you're doing, trying to get a word in edgewise, that's in all of us. That's the one talking to you. You might be hearing my voice, but that's who's talking. I'm just here to remind you, to bring to remembrance. As a temporary guide, as a temporary teacher, I just bring to remembrance that the truth that's already within you, the gifts are already within you. Everything that you are, everything that you desire to be is already what? It's already what? Entrusted in you. He says, yet in his lonely, senseless wanderings, God's gifts, notice now, go with him. Why? Because they're entrusted. All unknown to him. So remember we said about reality. We said that that which is real cannot be altered, but it can be unrecognized. And so what he's saying here is that when we embrace the thought system of separation and the belief in separation, we have not changed or altered reality. We have not changed our creation, who we are. We remain as God created us. All the gifts, everything, entrusted, signed, sealed, and delivered. Can't be changed at all. The only thing we can do is what? Go into a trance or a dream and dream of what it would be like to be separate and not unaware of that. To not recognize that and to go try to make another way. That's what we do. He says God's gift goes with him, all unknown to him. He cannot lose them. Notice now. Oh, this is what God's confident in what he's done. He said he cannot lose them, but he will not look at what is given him. He won't even look. He wanders on, aware of the futility he sees about him everywhere in this world. Futile. This world is futility. You remember Solomon in the Old Testament. Remember, Solomon was the richest man in the world. He had everything. And he got to the end of his life. He said, all this stuff is but what? Vanity. He says all vanity of futility. He says he cannot lose them, but he will not look on what was given him. He wanders on, aware of the futility he sees about him everywhere, perceiving how his little lot, his little life, what he has gathered. He says, perceiving how his little lot but dwindles as he goes ahead to nowhere. Very few of us go through life and our lot increases. Generally in this life, your lot decreases for many different reasons. And it's not that it may not decrease in substance, it decreases in value. In other words, the older you get, the longer you live, you realize, y'all know what I mean, you realize, I put so much stock, I put so much value in this, and it don't makes me happy. So now you want to extract, extract the stock that you put in it. You want to take the value out of it, but you want to say there is no value in this. You know how the older you get, the more you look at things, and you're like, it doesn't have the meaning in it. It don't have the pop anymore. It doesn't have the meaning to me anymore. You're willing to give it away. Why? Because you're coming to realize that this is not your home. These are not your things. This is not where your focus should be. That's why notice the older people get, the more they want to learn about God, the more they want to talk about God. The more they want to change their emphasis. Why? Because think about it. They're seeing the end of the time period for the body. That's why. And all of a sudden they want to talk about God. And that's okay. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. Because God guarantees that everyone eventually going to wake up. It's a guarantee. And if it doesn't look like someone woke up in this lifetime, they'll be back. Still, he wanders on in misery and in poverty, alone though God is with him, even though God is with him. And a treasure his so great that everything the world contains is valueless before its magnitude. So God is saying, for the totality of the time that you're in this dream, maybe experiencing lack, scarcity, suffering, sickness, disease, pain, whatever, fear, doubt. He says, all along the way, there is a magnitude of gifts within you that has always been there. He seems a sorry figure, weary, worn in the threadbare clothing, and with feet that bleeds a little from the rocky roads he walks. No one but has identified with him, for everyone who comes to this world, has pursued the path he follows, and has felt defeat and hopelessness, and he is feeling them. Yet is he really tragic when you see that he is following the way he chose, and need but realize who walks with him and open up his treasure to be free. So all this is saying here is that we're never without God. Even on this journey that we're on, this journey that we've chosen to take, to make something of ourselves, only to be frustrated and weary and worn. That's all these descriptions is about. Worn out from trying to make sense out of life, trying to find happiness and peace and joy in life. It's not out there. God, the whole time, God said, it's where I placed it. It's in you. I'm in you. Trying to vie for our attention. Tapping us on our shoulder in every moment, between every thought of pain and suffering. God is is extending love to us. He said, this is your chosen self. This is not God. This is your chosen self. This is not what God chose. God said he chose you from the foundation of the world, that you should be holy and blameless, that he has blessed you with every spiritual blessing in the heavenlies. He said, that's what I chose for you. He said, this is your chosen self, the one you made. Notice now, the one that you made as a replacement for reality. See, God created us in reality. In the fullness of his glory, we were created. He created us immaculate. We're not talking about our body self. He's talking about the timeless and the formless self that's been with God before the beginning. Before time was, before form was, we were with him in the beginning. And you can't touch a point where there's a beginning, because we've always been and will always be. He say, this is the life that you have chose. He say, this is the self that you savagely defended against all reason. Every evidence and all the witnesses with proof to show this is not you. You heed them all. He said, you heed not. He said that we heed not them. None of the witnesses, none of the way God was trying to show us. No, that's not the way. I am the way. I'm the truth. I'm the life. And we said, no. The world twinkling. The world is offering me this and that. He said, you heed them not. You go on your appointed way, with eyes cast it down, lest you might catch a glimpse of truth and be released from self-deception and set free. So when we make ourselves, when we ignore God and we try to make a life for ourselves, try to create another will other than God, it says that we are in self-deception. And we have given that up for freedom. We have given that. We have embraced that in lieu of freedom. He said, you cower fearfully, lest you should feel, notice now, Christ's touch upon your shoulder and perceive his gentle hands directing you to look upon your gifts. How could you then proclaim your poverty in exile? He would make you laugh at this perception of yourself. I can remember when I started to embrace the truth of who I am and came to know who I am. And I look back on how I used to think about myself, and it caused me to laugh. I laugh now. I laugh a whole lot. And y'all know that if you've been following me, I chuckle and laugh. Why? Because it's funny. It's not serious. See, we took it serious. We took the idea of separation serious, and God didn't take it serious. He said we forgot to laugh. And so when you come into the knowledge of the truth, you laugh all the time. Because when you look at this world, it's funny. It's unreal, but it's funny. It's a false world, but it's funny. It's comical when you look at it in lieu of like he said, the gigantic inheritance that God has given unto us. The magnitude of what we are. It's funny when we think about how we had walked away from the magnitude that God created us to be for the littleness of something we were trying to make. It's very funny. So laugh at yourself. It's very healthy. It's divine to laugh at yourself in this world. And you can only laugh at yourself because you know who you are. And the self that you're laughing at is not your real, is not your reality, your real self. The real you, the self you're laughing about is the comical one you made. Where is self-pity then? God said, where's self-pity? And what becomes of all the tragedy you sought to make for him whom God intended only joy? And what becomes of what? All of our foolishness. I mean, God, I love where this conversation is going. He said, your ancient fears have come upon you now, and justice has caught up with you at last. Christ's hand has touched your shoulders, and you feel that you are not alone. There's a shift here. You even think that miserable self, you even think the miserable you that you made was you. The self we thought we would make, we thought it was really us. He said, you even think the miserable self you thought was you may not be your identity. Perhaps God's word is truer than my own. We begin to what? We begin to what? Hear the voice for God. Perhaps he said, perhaps his gifts are to you are real. Perhaps he has not wholly been outwitted by your plan to keep his son in deep oblivion and go the way you choose without your true self. God's will does not oppose. Notice now, God is not threatened by a dream of separation, so he doesn't oppose us. God is not after you. He's not opposed to you. Unlike religion would teach you. God is not opposed. That's why when the prodigal son came and asked the father for his inheritance, you notice the father what? Immediately gave him his inheritance. He wasn't offended. He wasn't threatened. He wasn't, because he knew there was nothing outside of his kingdom. God wasn't opposed when Adam and Eve decided what? Go it alone. He even helped him. He gave him a what? Lunchbox. Why? Because he knew there's nothing out there. So God is not opposed to our what? To our vain imaginings. He's not opposed to us falling asleep. He's not opposed to us trying to find our own way. Why? Because there is no other way. He knows you can't go anywhere. God's will does not oppose. It merely is. Just like you merely are. It is not God you have imprisoned in your plan to lose your true self. You can't imprison God. You can't imprison yourself. You can only imprison a character in a dream of separation that you call John and Mary and Bill and whatever our name is. It says, he does not know about a plan so alien to his will. God isn't even aware of you dreaming. Just like when you walk into your daughter or your son's room and they're laying in the bed and they're dreaming and they're in a nightmare and they got all this stuff going on in their dream. You're not even aware of what's going on in the dream. Why? Because you know the truth. The truth is they're safe, they're home, they're laying in their bed, in your bed, in the Father's home. But from the dreamer's perspective, the booger man is after me. The bear is after me. The tiger is after me. I'm falling from a tall building. You know, all those things that goes on in the dream. And you're not even aware of the content. And God's not aware. God is not even aware that we have tried to go our way and make a life for ourselves. Because he knows that's just only in dreams. And it's an illusion. It's not real. He does not know about our plans so alien to his will. That's what he means. There was a need he did not understand, to which he gave an answer. God gave an answer, even to the seeming dream. That is all. And you who have this answer given you have need no more of anything but this. That is all. That was God's answer. That is all. Now do we live, for now we cannot die. The wish for death is answered, and the sight that looked upon it now has been replaced by vision, which perceives that you are not what you pretended yourself to be. There's a shift here. One walks with you, who gently answers all your fears with this one merciful reply. It is not so. So God is saying to us today, it is not so. That is all. It's not so. You say, but God, I'm I got all this guilt and sin consciousness and fear. God is saying, well, it's not so. It's only in dreams. You say, but God, you say, well, in my religious upbringing, they said that you were this way, God. And God is saying, well, it's not so. Well, I got, I live in this country and this government, and they say that this is the way and this is the dream. God said, it's not so. But God, do you remember all of those bad things that I did when I was a kid, or when I was a teenager, or when I was a young adult? All of these things that they said that I was breaking the law, and God said, well, it's not so. One walks with you, who gently answers all your fears with this one merciful reply: it is not so. He points to all the gifts you have each time the thought of poverty oppresses you, and speaks of his companionship when you perceive yourself as lonely and afraid. Yet he remembers you still of one thing more you have forgotten. For his touch on you has made you like himself. His touch has made you like himself. Notice now, touch represents what? God's absolute focus on extending exactly what he was. So there'd be no exception. That's his touch. That he knows without a doubt what he created. He knows without a doubt that you are just like him. He knows without a doubt that you're not separate from him, that you guys share the same life, the same being, the same self. He knows of your complete innocence, of your complete guiltlessness. He knows of your sinlessness. He knows of your eternity. He knows of your what? He knows of your changelessness. That is the touch. The gifts you have are not for you alone. What he has come to offer you, you now must learn to give. So there's been a what? Complete turnaround here. This is the lesson that his giving holds. For he has saved you from the solitude you sought to make, in which to hide from God. He has remembered you for all the gifts that God has given you. He speaks as well of what becomes your will when you accept these gifts and recognize that they are your own. So, this little story we've been kind of reading through is our story. It's been your story. It's everyone's story. But from God's point of view, there's only one story. It's his story. And his story is your story. And his story is reality. And so your story is reality. And so in the story, you are restored to reality, all humanity. It's restored. So you have to read the last chapter, which is just like the first chapter. And you realize that nothing really happened in between all those pages. It was like just reading a fantasy novel. But here's what God always concludes. He concludes with what he began with. So the beginning and there is no ending. There is no beginning. There is no ending. But all in between is the same, is what he's saying. I was there all the time. And you never changed. He says, the gifts the gifts are yours. Wow. He said, entrusted to your care, meaning what? They were built into your reality. To give to all who chose the lonely road that you have escaped, now that you have awakened from the dream. He said the gifts are all yours for you to give away to all those that who are still on the slippery slope. Those who are still dreaming of separation. Those you now look at and you say, oh, I escaped that reality, that unreality to reality. I'm going to go and help my brother escape the unreality by giving him the gifts. He says, they do not understand, they but pursue their own wishes. It is you who teaches them now, right? So we become teachers. We become the light of the world. We become the saviors of the world. Why? Because we've waken up. We have awakened. And we're looking around at all the sleeping people who's trying to do the impossible like I did. And I finally saw the light. For you have learned of Christ. There is another way for them to walk. Teach them by showing them the happiness that comes to those who feel the touch of Christ and recognize God's gifts. Let sorrow not tempt you to be unfaithful to your trust. Your sigh will now betray the hopes of those who look to you for their release. Your tears are theirs. If you are sick, you but withhold their healing. What you fear but teaches them, their fears are justified. Your hand becomes the giver of Christ's touch. Your change of mind becomes the proof that who accepts God's gift can never suffer anything. You are entrusted with the world's release from pain. So when we wake up to the reality of our true self, we now become the light to all those that still walk in darkness. And so we don't play with the illusions anymore. There's nothing to fear. There's no sickness and disease that you would want. Your mind has been Your mind has been renewed, and you're no longer conformed to this world, but you're transformed. And so now your mind is free to accept all of the gifts, all of the healing, all of the restoration. It has happened to you. He says, you are entrusted with the world's release from pain. Betray it not. Betray not that which you've been entrusted with. Do not ignore it. Become the living proof of what Christ's touch can offer everyone. In other words, you become the substance of things hoped for. You become the evidence of things not seen. You become the answer. You become the answer to everyone's desire to wake up. Your life becomes the vaccine. Your love becomes the lifter up of all humanity. Your forgiveness, it becomes like a beautiful flower. Your laughter, your joy, your peace, your acceptance of all humanity, your equality, your right standing becomes a point of reference for everyone. Your life now counts for the biggest assignment one can have. That is to have the will of God been expressed in your life. And you become this vital part to the plan of God for salvation for everyone. It says, be witness in your happiness to how transformed the mind becomes, which chooses to accept his gifts. So today, in this moment, Father, we thank you for all of the abundance of grace, all of the the honor that comes from you only, all that you bestowed and entrusted with us in our creation. We see them, we notice them, we know that they are there, we're completely certain about them. We're absolutely sure about who we are. We know that we are in you and you are within us, and we're in this with all of life. There is no separation. There's only oneness. God is, and there is nothing else. God is, and therefore I am that I am. Full of the gifts of God, filled with the glory of God. Nothing missing and nothing broken. I'm this timeless and formless being that changes not. I was with you in the beginning, and I'll remain with you throughout all eternity. This is the truth that is true always. And we thank you for it. Our life has transcended what we've made. We bring all the illusions of this world to the truth, and we transform them. We consume them in our love. We heal with all the healing. We bring all the illusions of healing and sickness and scarcity and poverty and fear and doubt and sin consciousness and guilt. We bring it all into the love creation that we are with you. And it all ends up as the one thing. Such is our mission now. So if you never thought you had a purpose, if you never really thought that you didn't have a mission or a vision, you know now. And it doesn't get any higher. It doesn't get any important. It doesn't get any significant. You have received the honor that comes from God only. There's nothing that's higher than the heavens. Now your life has purpose. Now everything in life has a purpose. It has been reinterpreted through the mind of God, through Christ consciousness. And now you see that everything is being used to wake up all humanity. And so your life is on a mission. You are a person on a mission for God. A real missionary. A real healer. Why? Because you're healed. You're not unhealed, but you're a healed healer. That's now out into the world. You are truly the light of the world. For God entrusts the giving of his gift to all who have received them. We don't know that it's ours unless we will share it and give it away. That's what we're doing here on Truly Foundation. We are sharing with you the greatest gift of all in these sessions, in these lessons. He has shared his joy with us. God has shared his joy with us. This is a joyous moment. This is a holy instant in which we see clearly now the extraordinary oneness that only exists. We see the endlessness of reality that we are part of. We see the love in which we were birthed into. He has shared his joy with us. And now we go to share it with the world. I am entrusted, and so are you. And so all humanity. But the gifts of God. Wow. It doesn't get any better than that. And you haven't heard the end. This is just what we only 166 days in. What do you think? What do you think we might be looking like or looking through? And an additional, are we halfway there? Maybe. No, I don't think so. We're not even halfway. Can you imagine where are we going to be swimming in by the end of 365 days of this? Can you imagine? Don't go away. Stay with us. We're not going anywhere. This journey that we're on is without a distance because we have awakened to the reality that there's only the now present moment. And in this present moment, there's so many gifts, so many pleasures, such a grand mission, so much honor and glory. That is beyond what we could ask or think. The little mind that we got can't even ask or think. Of what God has entrusted us with. Everything. 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 Thank you for being here. Tomorrow, come back. Workbook lesson 167. We got 4 more before we hit another review period. So I'm sure we're gonna go out in a blaze before we hit that review period. So you want to be here for the next 3-4 sessions. The ocean we're swimming in is bottomless. So how deep do we want to go? How much into God do we want to be and see and experience? Come join us. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.